welcome back. This is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri, and we're moving on to our ABC dialogue for this Monday morning.
So for today, we are going to discuss with a focus on race, and this time is about Sweden. So the title of our discussion today is Removing Race Boxes and how the Swedish did it. So this is based on the news that we read this morning, which is related to the Swedish government announcing that it plans to remove all mentions of race from Swedish legislation, saying that race is a social construct which should not be encouraged in law.
Yeah, and it seems that it's funny because over here we are pretty positive about it, but there are a lot of comments that I have here where people look at it from a negative point of view. In the sense that Sweden is trying to standardize all the race in the country.
hmm So, in a way, I think we Malaysians and also in Southeast Asia can learn a thing or two on the situation in Sweden and how the Swedish government is trying to overcome it and sort of making changes in terms of the way society view race, as it is definitely socially construct, in my opinion.
So, according to an article that I have here, the Swedish integration minister Erik Ullenhag, I hope I got the name right.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I guess you did.
he said, we know that there aren't really different human races. We know that the fundamental grounds of racism are based on the belief that there are different races and that belonging to a certain race makes the people behave in a certain way and that some races are superior to the others. I think we mentioned a little bit about ethnocentrism earlier in
hmm
our previous discussion as well. And that's one of the key reasons why they want to do away with this whole concept of race.
Yeah, I want to start with just sharing with you all regarding on the history of race and the human classification of race. So, the idea of race itself is a very new idea. Even I mean, I love reading history book, especially in relations to the formation of Malaya and all that. I realized that the idea of race started to penetrate into the minds of Malaysians. I think during the colonial period, when the British colonies wanting to sort of classify people based on their geographical background and their identity. So they create this idea that, oh, so the original people here are considered Malay, and then the Indians are people who came from India, while the Chinese are people who came from China, while those who live in the forest, who do not have a certain standard of civilization, according to the British people, they are considered the aborigines. So in a way, people are classified based on how they lead their life, their lifestyle, and where they came from at that period. But for a more idea of purification of race, there's this one scientist during the early days of the science. They started to create this idea that maybe race has a hierarchy, and the hierarchy is based on the intelligence of the race itself. So it started to create this idea that certain people belong to a certain group of society and they have a certain level of intelligence. Of course, they will put the white people as the superior race.
Mhm.
Hence, you have the Germans creating this propaganda as the Aryans as the superior race, which is not true. The advancements of science sort of break this myth in a way that shows that you can be white, black, yellow, blue, or whatever color your skin is. Your blood is still the same. Your DNA is still the same. Your intelligence level is the same as the rest of society.
Another thing that I think a lot of people are confused about, especially in Malaysia, is there are two things. One is race and nationality, and the other one is race and religion. Because I've come across so many of my friends where you ask them, "Are you Indian?" and they say, "No, I'm Christian."
Oh.
And
What
you're
what
like,
does has Christian to do with race?
yeah, exactly. And even back in USM, I think a lot of people, when the lecturer actually asks you, "So like, are you Indian?" and they'll be like, "No, I'm Christian." and then the lecturer is like, hey, you're in a university and you can't tell the difference between race and religion. And I don't think it's because that person is stupid or what. I think it's just the way things work in this country, that we are so particular about what race or what religion are we, that it just gets to your head sometimes, and it clouds your judgment in certain ways.
It definitely happened during the Enlightenment period. I think everyone knows this French Enlightenment writer, Voltaire. I mean, Voltaire. He's a really amazing person when it comes to his philosophical ideas and Enlightenment ideals. But when it comes to race, he's a bit one step or three step backwards. He said he compared Caucasians, which are the white people, to Negroes, which actually it is a derogatory terms for black people. And then this is what he compared. He compared them to as if it's different breeds of dogs. He stated that the Negro race is a species of man different from ours, as the breed of spaniels is from the greyhounds. The mucous membrane or network which nature has spread between the muscles and skins is white in us and black or copper colored in them. So I think at that period of time, before the 19th century and all that, I think society still see that, you know, people should be categorized into this different colors and characterization, and this is what was being classified by this researcher called Carl Linnaeus. So the people from the America, which is like red color, indigenous and all that, they are called the Americanos. And then of course the white people are considered the Europeanness, and the Asian people, which yellow, to them they are melancholic and stiff, are considered the Asiacus. And while people from the Africa, they are considered as Afar or Africanus. So, and the last one, which they categorize people who are considered mythological humans, they are considered as monstruosus, which I thought is kind of weird for them to categorize people as such.
So essentially, there were only 5 different races in the world that we were segregated in. And that reminds me about this one book that I read. I think I can't remember what it called. Unfortunately, I think it was Orientalism by Edward Said, where he talks about.
He's an amazing writer, and I think he really addressed the issue regarding on race.
Where he was talking about how the West refer to themselves as the West, and the rest of the world was just the others. He just was talking about how the Western just call us the others, like we don't even deserve to have a name or what, because of the white supremacy, the superiority complex that they had.
And it was clearly being demonstrated actually during the 9/11, where I think the American President Bush, he sees the rest of the world as the others, while Americans are Americans, which to him the idea of being a good American citizen is white and hardworking and having this Christian sort of working ethics and values. So I think in a way the idea is still, I mean, as much as we try to break the idea of race, it is still there right until now. And I think in a lot of countries, including majority of the Southeast Asian countries, which see race as a sort of classification of social society.
Especially in India, I think, with the caste system, because I think looking at India itself, you would just assume that, you know, everyone would be referred to as Indians. But if you were to talk to them, they would tell you, no, I'm from this particular caste and that makes me more superior, or this person is from this particular caste and that means that he's lower than me.
Can you share with me like the different classes of the caste system? Because I know the highest ranking one is the Brahmins. But what about the rest?
I'm not too familiar with all the different castes that they have, especially because they don't really practice it in Malaysia, and I hope they are not it's not being that widely practiced in India as well. But there's actually a lot. There is not, I think, there is not a systematic way of actually classifying these people. But I can tell you the extent that it goes. Like a person from maybe a Brahmin will not be allowed to marry anyone from the caste that is below them because it's seen as degrading to their caste. And they also tend to be very obsessed about skin color because I think the Brahmins usually tend to be light skinned, and therefore it's very easy to know in India whether you're a Brahmin or not, because if you have dark skin, I think it's impossible. You cannot go around saying, "Oh, I'm a Brahmin," because it shows in your skin color. And these Brahmins are mostly the ones in the temple
But the
facilitating.
but the obsession for skin color is not just an Indian thing, but I think it's a Southeast Asian thing as well. But I'm quite curious where the idea of having a lighter skin means that you have a better social status. Like, does it really something that has been there since before the Western colonization, or it started during the colonial period where people just view the colonies those who are of superior race, and the majority of them, of course, they are white.
I think if you're speaking of India, it could be because of how rare it is. Because even right now, if you look at Indians, generally they are dark skinned. So when someone has very fair skin, you're like, whoa, why do you have fair skin? So that kind of makes them special in a way, and people have that perception like, oh, okay, so this is very rare, and therefore it must be special. I think it stemmed from there a lot because it's still happening a lot. Like even in my family or like most of my friends, generally when they see someone really fair, they're like, wow, this person has very rare special skin, and immediately that person becomes more attractive or more special in that sense.
So I guess I have special skin, I guess.
Oh, you're not Indian, so it doesn't count.
Well, one thing that I want to address about skin color is in the context of Southeast Asia is even worse than I originally assumed, because it becomes like a social status. Like, for example, like women especially, because of the social economic background of theirs, it seems like they would rather date someone from who is a mat saleh, or another word would be someone who is a foreigner of a lighter skin, like the Westerners, rather than dating someone of their own kind, or someone else that are of a darker skin, because to them it symbolizes social status. It shows that, oh, you will be secure, you will be dating someone that is really of a superior race,
And you'll have beautiful babies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm really dumbfounded by the idea of you marry someone because you want to have beautiful babies. Because to me, a union means that you should be with a guy or a girl who really cherish you as who you are, and you cherish them as who they are.
I also want to talk about the difference between race and nationality, because in Malaysia, especially, I think we're really confused. Because, like, for example, if I were to tell someone, for example, when I meet someone and I introduce myself to them, then they would ask me, "Oh, are you Indian?" And that would go back to, I guess, my ethnicity as an Indian. But that could also translate to the fact that, like, my ancestors came from India. But the fact is that I was born here and I just want to be a Malaysian. But that doesn't seem to be enough in that sense. They still want to insist on that. So, like, where do you draw the line in this case?
I think I would be on your side. I think the idea of nationality and also the idea of race should be of a different category. But then I personally feel that we should not have any of those categories at all as part of our identity, or at least as the prominent part of our identity. For example, I personally feel that regardless of what color you are, you shouldn't be too much identified towards your own race. I mean, case in point is me. I mean, my name itself is very. You can definitely realize that it's a mix. I'm from a mixed family,
Hmm.
but at the same time, like people always try to categorize me like, are you a Malay or
Hmm.
Chinese or Serani or
And you're like, what does it matter?
Indian? Yeah, yeah. That's the case in point that I want to highlight. Like, what does it matter? I mean, what matter the most is my nationality and how much. I mean, how good I am as a person. Um, and what is dangerous, I think, is mixing race and nationality together. Like the idea, I mean, in the case in point Malaysia, if you see the trend here, if you are Malay or if you are the ideal Malaysian would be a Malay. So any non-Malay, they should aspire themselves to be as Malay as possible. I had this conversation via Facebook with a friend of mine, which I disagree with him. So one of the member of parliament wrote a statement in his Facebook in Chinese, and it got him unhappy about it because he said that you are a member of parliament, you should be
Hmm.
writing all your statement or even also in social media or whatever in Malay to show that you want to reach out to the rest of the community, not just towards the Chinese. I found that a bit. I don't know. I disagree with that idea because to me it shows that the ideal Malaysian is to be a Malay, which is not true because our country is very diverse, very multicultural. Like I don't think you should impose like you have to be using that particular language only in order
Hmm.
for you to be the perfect Malaysian or the ideal Malaysian.
I was reading a book by Kitwan Chai, and he's one person who feels very strongly about Malaysia, its future, and especially about racial issues, racial integration, and all. So he came up with this concept, which most people think are controversial, but I'm not too sure if I agree with it too. But I'm probably like 60-40, like 60% in favor of it, where he decided to name his son Jabat Arjuna Ki Jialiang because he thinks that in order for you to completely be a Malaysian, like what you said, because your name is a mix, and he thinks that everyone should have an Indian name, a Chinese name, and a Malay name when they are naming their kids, because then when they
Can I have a
introduce
French name?
no. So in this case, when his son introduced himself to someone, they'd be like, "Wait, Jabbar, Arjuna, Ki, so are you Indian, Malay, or Chinese?" And then the son can just say, "I'm everything, I'm Malaysian." So what's your thought on that?
Well, I think I would disagree with him as well,
Hmm.
but maybe not agreeing with him like to up to until 60%. I think I would agree with him up until 40%.
Okay.
The reason for it is because I think we should not be too bogged down or bogged up by our identity based on race.
Hmm.
The more we emphasize on race, like naming our child based on the three majority race in this country, or trying to create this ideal Malaysian by saying that, oh, you have to know this language or not, you are not Malaysian enough, or you have to know this mother tongue language or not, you are not your own race enough. I mean, I have friends who do not know how to speak their mother tongue language well, and they are being seen as the outsider race, and I find that amusing because it's like, are you saying that you have to embrace like perfectly a certain racial identity in order for you to be of that race? I think it's really wrong because in the sense that you are still playing the game based on or playing the rule based on race, regardless whether you want to get a notch up, meaning that you want to make sure that everyone has the same name or everyone intermarriage with each other, so you are not allowed to marry your own race, you should marry with other people in order for you to have wider understanding. It is good in a way if it's based on love, but it shouldn't be a rule, it shouldn't be like something that you have to do it in order for you to be the perfect Malaysian.
Actually, that's a very interesting point. Intermarriages, I think that would make more sense than just changing the name of your kids, because it gives a more holistic approach in that sense. And yeah, also I just wanna. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced it before when you leave Malaysia. Like when I was in China and people ask me, "So where are you from?" And I say I'm from Malaysia, and then they're like, "Oh, so you're Malaysian?" And I'm like, "Yeah." and that's enough for them. They don't dig deeper. They don't
I know,
ask
me too.
you.
I face similar situation with my foreign friends. I found it really I don't know how to describe the feeling,
Hmm.
but relief because I don't have to explain where I come from. I just have to say I'm Malaysian. Some of them don't even ask about my nationality. They're like,
Right.
"Oh, okay."
Because if that happened in Malaysia, that somebody asked me like, so where are you from? And if I were to say like, oh, I'm from Penang, then you'd be like, oh, are you Indian? Why do you have short hair? Or why are you speaking in English? Why are you not speaking in Tamil? And they have like all these questions that they want to
They
ask.
want to put you in your place, which is your own race box.
And yeah, I guess I just want to say like, well, I'm Malaysian, I can speak Malay. Like, isn't that enough? Well, that's
Yeah.
probably a little too extreme, maybe, but I mean, I'm sorry, but the way I see it, that's sufficient for me as a Malaysian.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you, but we have to take a short break.
Yeah, of
And we
course.
return back. I think we will focus more on how the Swedish did it and how we can learn from it, especially for Malaysia. We need to move on beyond this racial politics and racial identity.
Voice of sharing, durian ASEAN.
Hey, we are returning back to our conversation today relating to removing the race boxes, how the Swedish did it. So, uh, I guess right now, let's focus on the Swedish government, why they decided to to sort of change, the their legislature to make sure that there's no such thing as race mentioned in it. I think first of all, we have to understand the social context of the Swedish society. I think we all know, like, within the European society, including Sweden, there's a huge, I would say, Islamophobic towards the Muslims, and in that regards, I think they consider them either as the lesser intelligent society or society that is of a lesser in terms of their socio-economic background, or a society that could be this fundamentalist that they would control or rule over Sweden, which I thought that is probably not true.
I mean, I actually don't know about that perception
Hmm.
among the European countries.
Hmm.
Um, but to really look at this concept of race, like, is it really the only way to achieve full integration among the people?
I think by removing the mention of race,
Mm.
especially in legislating law and constitution and all these institutions that requires standardization, is could could definitely integrate society. Doesn't mean you are removing your original identity. Let's say I'm a Malay or a Chinese or an Indian. I think I can still maintain my own identity as whatever race or ancestry that I came from, but it's just that when it comes to the law, I have equal rights or equal social status as any other races. Because once you mention the idea of race in legislating law, constitutions, and also policy, it becomes very biased towards a certain race, and we see that happening in a lot of the European countries. I mean, case in point, when it comes to France. The French government bans women wearing headscarf, especially in schools when they teach the children. And I think it's really in a way, you want to respect religious rituals and values, but at the same time, you want to maintain this republic that is secular and non-religious. The best way forward is to treat to respect people as the way you want to be respected. You allow them to sort of perform their religious rituals and values, but at the same time, you make sure that they don't hinder other people's religious values and rights as well.
And I think back in Malaysia, a few years ago, when our Prime Minister Najib came up with this One Malaysia concept, and a lot of people thought that it was probably heading in that direction, that all of us are going to be just Malaysians, because I think he did say Satu Bangsa Malaysia, and that's about it. But that was not the case, and I remember reading a lot of articles in newspapers, especially in the opinion section, saying why, if we have this one Malaysia thing, why are we still filling out forms, where we have to tick whether we're Indian, Chinese, Malay, or even others in that sense.
I totally agree. And in fact, it's been stated by the Swedish integration minister. I don't think we have that in Malaysia, integration minister. Eric Ulsberg, I think you already said that earlier, his name. He said that human races actually do not exist and definitely is socially construct. He also added that we also know the fundamental grounds of racism are based on the belief that they are different races, that belonging to a race makes people behave in a certain way, and that some races are better than others.
And it's interesting that some of the people that leave comments here think that this is actually a way of indirect ethnic cleansing, where he's just trying to make everybody white, and that's it.
Do you agree with it?
I don't quite agree with it. I think that he's doing it probably in the best interest of the people, because well, I probably don't know how things really are in Sweden at the moment, but according to him, he's saying that pretty much like what you mentioned earlier. He said when the race is there, we tend to still talk about it. We tend to take it into consideration when we are coming up with new legislation. But then he also said that when you take it away, then there is no possibility to talk about it. And how can you apply for a grant for fighting racism if the concept of race doesn't even exist in the legislation? So he thinks that the moment you remove race from whatever context, there will be no need to address racism anymore, because it immediately dies with the move of removing the word race.
But people who are against it criticize this. For example, from the National Afro-Swedish Association, it stated that the scientific racism that Ulfberg, or Ulhak is Ulhak is focusing on, when he says that racism is based on the believing in different races, is not true. The person added that how many people in Sweden really think that way? Maybe 100. That's not the problem. Racism existed before the concept of race biology. Scientific racism is just one chapter in the story of race and racism. And the person also added that the person agreed that race is a social construct, but at the same time, just because it's a social construct doesn't mean that it is not a reality. For them, this is just trying to take away the possibility to even talk about it is critical.
I think he's also removing race because it says here that he wants equal opportunity for everyone, especially in terms of healthcare, education, employment, because so long as the word exists, the word race, and when you are coming up with the legislation, you will, I guess, be inclined to come up with different legislations for a different race. And he also said that he's been thinking about doing this for a very long time, and he finally came about to actually carry through with the plan this time.
Actually, as much as I sympathize with the views of the leader of the Afro-Swedish Association, I can't help but to agree with the government of Sweden, because if you look at other secular country within this region, for example, Singapore, but at the same time, Singapore still recognize the majority races and put them in race boxes like the Malay, Chinese, Indian, and the other races, and the society there are still being bogged down, as in like they are still they still face certain roadblocks, even though the word race is mentioned in their law and constitution, they still face roadblocks, especially when it comes to their lives and the economy. It seems like they themselves are seen as of a lesser race, even though it is mentioned. I think the moment you remove the word race in all the laws and constitution and all that, doesn't mean you are removing the identity of the person's origin. You are just acknowledging that all humans are the same. And I would definitely agree with the Swedish legislature.
But I think even if this was to be maybe even be suggested in Malaysia, I think I have a feeling that a lot of people would not agree with it. That there will be a huge outcry to protest a standardization of such where everyone is just Malaysians because um, I guess we still do have a strong ethnocentrism happening in the country, and some people would want to preserve that. Like, no, I don't want to just be Malaysian. I want people to know that I'm Indian or Malay or Chinese.
I totally would agree with you on that, especially the mention of the definition of Malay in the constitution, which is pretty vague. And also, but at the same time, is where would the Malays feel that their rights are being protected, which means their race are being mentioned in the constitution specifically, and it was also being mentioned specifically that Malay has a special rights above anyone else.
And I guess apart from that, although I think the non-Malays do recognize that, yeah, the Malays have a special right and all that. But I think even if you were to give them that status, they probably don't want that. They still want to stick to what they are. What do you think?
Remember our conversation off air relating to how the Swedish people or the Swedish government are way too forward thinking than probably most of the society in the world, and I would totally think that this is I mean I would totally agree with that because in a way I mean, look at us, Malaysians, and also people from the other in this Southeast Asian region. There's actually an article in the Economist written specifically on the race and religion issue in Southeast Asia, and the person really highlighted how much race and religion has played a huge role in terms of creating political destabilization. I mean, look at Myanmar with the issue between the Rohingya people and the Myanmar government, and look at Malaysia as well. Race and religion has become part of the political processes, and look at other areas in this country as well, like between people of different racial groups. They are against each other, and I think just because they are of a different background and skin color, and I think we should remove that sort of mindset, and I think we should move towards the steps of what the Swedish government is doing by removing the institutionalization of race.
And it's not just limited to racial issues. I think as a whole, even in regards to environment, in regards to education, or healthcare, or even in terms of addressing traffic issues, I think that they have a very different approach compared to us. Um, for example, in Germany, you are actually entitled for free education, or in Netherlands, for example, people actually think higher of you when you tell them that you cycle as opposed to if you have a car. But over here, it's so different. It's all about what car you drive and what brand it is, and it's just I guess, two very, very different approach. And I think that we definitely need to get past that to uh, to get to that realization or that enlightenment, maybe to know that it's really much more than material possession. We need to be more aware of our surrounding, especially regarding environmental issues. And it's not about how big your car is, how expensive your car is, or it doesn't matter you're driving a sports car or whatever. At the end of the day, you are still contributing to, I guess, the pollution and all that. So it's something that is still way beyond us, and we are not quite there yet.
I think the moment we remove race from our own mindset or from the public spheres, that's where we started to realize that there are bigger issues that we should concern. And of course, the bigger issue would be about climate change, poverty, and economy, and the way we conduct ourselves culturally among each other. And I think culture is beautiful. Race, I mean, without culture, without religion, without any other background, that enhance our understanding of the world, we are not considered. I don't think we would be considered human. We would probably be a robot that live throughout the cycle of life. But because we have all this background, it doesn't mean that we should use it as a negative means, to sort of like label ourselves, or this is what we are, and this is what my rights should be. I think on a level of institution or nation state, the idea of race should be removed, and that's my stand on this.
And to wrap things up, I would also like to give my stand on this. Um, I do think that maybe removing race altogether is probably a bit too extreme in that sense, but we definitely need to get past our racial issues that we have in this country. Stop treating everyone like, your race is better, or my race is better, or even your religion, my religion, because apart from race, religion is another ongoing feud that we always have in this country.
That would be another chapter to cover.
That is, I mean, you can see it on Facebook all the time. People. I don't want to be specific, but people dissing each other's God. Like, why do you only have one God, or why do you have so many gods, and all these ongoing things which are so petty. I think it really doesn't matter. We have to learn to accept our differences, know that everyone is different, and respect each other for it, accept each other for it. And at the end of the day, we all want to live in peace and in harmony among each other. It doesn't matter what race, religion you are, and we're all Malaysians, and we're here in Malaysia.
So with that, that's all from us today. Thank you for listening to us. As usual, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and give us, some constructive comments about this topic, as well as you can always follow us listen to us again in our YouTube podcast at durianasian.com, as well as, you can always listen to us live at where, Gowri?
On our website, of course, www.durianasian.com. And if you miss it, you can just go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/DurianASEAN, and we upload our podcast daily.
So thank you.